Hello, my darling friends. Welcome to another Bible time. Today is our last Bible time in our Compassion series. And after this lesson, I'm going to be taking a little break from these midweek videos. We are getting ready for a wonderful Sunday school launch for children's ministry, and we hope that all of our families will join us for our first Zoom calls on September 13th with their Sunday school teachers. This is a modified Sunday school experience based on the volunteers who are available and the families who expressed interest in such an online format. So I'll be taking a break from this for just a little while to get that going, and then maybe I'll pop back in mid-September or October to lead some different kinds of studies again. But for now, I hope you enjoy our final lesson on compassion. We'll be focusing on a well-known story. Before we dive into the actual scripture, we're going to play a quick game. I'm going to introduce you to a game, and you can play it with your family members. It's called Two Truths and a Lie. Have you ever played it? It's where one person will tell two things that are true about themselves and a lie in any order, and the people they're playing it with have to guess which one is the lie. And it's a great way to learn new things about each other, and it can kind of give you a clue as to some things that you might want to explore with these people that you think you know really well, or maybe that you're just getting to know. So let me give you an example. I'm going to tell you two truths and a lie, not necessarily in that order, and you have to guess which one is the lie. All right, so statement number one. I was born on the same day as my father. Statement number two. I like to do crafts in my spare time. Statement number three. I have two sisters, and they are my best friends in the whole world. All right, so which one was the lie? If you guessed that the first statement, that I was born on the same day as my father or have the same birthday as my father, I can't remember how I worded it, you're correct. That was the lie. Now, technically, when he got the phone call that I was born, it was still his birthday because we were in different time zones, but I was born on a different day. All right, so good job. So that's a fun game to get to know the people around you, and you can play that together. Now, before Jesus was taken up to heaven, when he was still alive on this earth, just like in our world today, there were groups of people that were enemies. People who refused to interact with each other because they hated each other so much and thought they had nothing in common. Now, one of the things that I like about the game Two Truths and a Lie is that it can often highlight the things that are the same about us and help us understand that we're more alike than we realized to begin with. Now, back in Jesus' day, the Jewish people and the Samaritans were afraid of one another because the Samaritans had done some pretty terrible things to the Jewish ancestors, and they disagreed about a lot of things religiously. In our story today, we will get to see how Jesus challenged the people he hung out with on a regular basis to think differently about their enemies, and maybe even find some similarities, like we can find in our little game that we played. Our scripture today comes from the book of Luke, chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. And it's a little bit long, so I invite you to settle yourself, maybe close your eyes, and imagine the story as you listen to this paraphrase of Luke 10, verses 25 to 37. A man who knew a whole lot about religious laws came to Jesus with a question. He said, "Teacher, how do I really, truly live with God?" And Jesus asked him, "Well, what does God's law say? How do you understand it?" The man answered him, "It says to love God completely with heart and soul and strength and mind, and to love your neighbor like your own self." And Jesus said to him, "That's it. Do that, and you'll have the life you're asking about." Still wondering, the man asked, "But who exactly is my neighbor?" And in response, Jesus told this story. A man was walking down the road that led from Jerusalem to Jericho when robbers attacked, took his clothes, beat him up, and left him lying there, suffering and alone. A priest happened to walk by, but as he came near, he saw the hurt man, and so he crossed to the other side of the road. After him, a Levite, another religious leader, did the same thing. But then a Samaritan came, and when he saw the injured man, he felt compassion for him. He came to the man and treated his wounds and bandaged them. He put the man on his own animal and brought him to an inn where he could be safe and rest while he healed. The Samaritan took care of the injured man. The next day, the Samaritan found the innkeeper, paid his bill, and said, "Take care of that man, and when I come back, I will pay you whatever it costs." Then Jesus asked, "Who became a neighbor to the man who was attacked?" And the man with the question said, "The one who had compassion for him." And Jesus said, "Go, do that." Friends, we talk a lot about being a good neighbor, about showing compassion to those in need. I wonder, what does being a neighbor mean to you? When you hear the word neighbor, who comes to mind? I wonder, how did the man in the story feel after he was robbed and beaten? I wonder what the Samaritan was thinking when he decided to help the man in need, even though Samaritans and Jews normally didn't get along at the time. What do you think was going through the Samaritan's mind? Most of the people listening to this story would have been enemies to the Samaritans, since Jews and Samaritans did not get along. How do you imagine the people Jesus was talking to felt when they heard this story of the Samaritan reaching out to help a Jewish man? How would you feel if you were in their shoes? And finally, friends, I wonder, Is there someone you could surprise this week with your willingness to help? I know that in this time of COVID, while most of us are not going out into groups, we're not volunteering like we usually do, it can be difficult to find ways to help. But with everything that's going on in our world and in our country, can you think of someone or a group of people who need your compassion, who need you to step up and do the right thing? What can you do to be a neighbor for them in this time? Friends, as I sign off for the last time this summer, I want you to know what a privilege it has been to talk about compassion with you, to explore the scriptures together, and to think about how we can follow Jesus more closely. My prayer for you as we enter a new season, a school season, the fall semester, my prayer for you is that Jesus will transform your heart in new ways, that you will more closely serve him every single day, and that our world will begin to look a little bit more like the new heaven and the new earth, because you have been transformed by the God of the universe. I love you, friends. As always, music follows, and I will see you soon. Bye.
Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of my children, that's what you've done for me. Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of my children, that's what you've done for me. When you help the immigrant and treat them with love, that's what you've done for me. When you show God's love to orphans and widows in their need, that's what you've done for me. Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of my children, that's what you've done for me. Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of my children, that's what you've done for me. When you act with justice and show faithful love, that's what you've done for me. When you speak up for the voiceless and walk complete with God, that's what you've done for me. Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of my children, that's what you've done for me. Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of my children, that's what you've done for me. When you help your friends at school when you feed the poor. That's what you've done for me. Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of my children, that's what you've done for me. And Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of my children, that's what you've done for me. When you love the Lord your God with your heart and soul, that's what you've done for me. When you love your neighbor as you love yourself, that's what you've done for me. Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of my children, that's what you've done for me. Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of my children, that's what you've done for me. Yes, that's what you've done for me. And that's what you've done for me. We are the people of God. We are the people of God. We are chosen and beloved, and so we must clothe ourselves with compassion and kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. And over all these things,